The search for Bigfoot. There is a ton of phony claims, fake evidence, and weird people that all nullify the claim for Bigfoot. But despite the fake evidence, I actually think there's a lot of unexplainable events and circumstances that may raise some questions. Is Bigfoot real? Many cultures have their own Bigfoot. They may call them the Yeti, Sasquatch, the Alam, the Yeren, the Yowie, the list goes on. And although there's no definitive proof of Bigfoot, many still believe in its existence today. This video is an analysis and compilation of some of the most compelling evidence I've found. My name is Brandon Mitchell and you're watching The Happy Dead. I'd like to start off by thanking everybody who subscribed and watched my previous video. I really appreciate it. And if you're coming in from TikTok, hey, what's up? Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I actually been trying to start one of these podcasts, or I don't even want to really call it a podcast. It's more of like an experience, you know. But it's a YouTube experience that you can experience via podcast. So you could catch me on Spotify, the podcast app, or wherever else you can find podcasts. So before we dive into the legend of Bigfoot, I just want to put my position out there. So I'm a Bigfoot agnostic. I don't necessarily not believe in Bigfoot, but I do think there's a lot of unexplainable evidence that may point to a Bigfoot. And after doing some research for some unbiased thoughts about Bigfoot, I stumbled across Les Stroud. You may know Les Stroud from his hit TV series Survivorman, which within the past year has been published onto YouTube by Les himself, which I think is super cool. Since Les has all the rights to the videos and everything, he puts all that amazing content out there for free, so seriously go check it out. It's amazing. I love his show. Les is just such a cool dude. So why do I trust Les Stroud? Well, while watching his director's commentary of some of his episodes, this man has never been one to fake anything. He's pretty cut and dry and tells it like it is. And if you haven't seen Les's director's commentary of his episodes, it's super awesome. You're just like watching the episode basically with him in the living room giving commentary. So it's so cool. And it was while digging through his YouTube channel that I discovered his TV series called Survivorman Bigfoot. So obviously being a Les Stroud fan, I had to go check it out. And just to be clear, Les himself isn't a believer or even a Sasquatch enthusiast. In my opinion, makes him the perfect person to try to find Bigfoot, right? He's just an amazing outdoor adventure survival specialist, and you wouldn't have thought, but he's a killer musician as well, and he's also a producer, which this guy does everything, I swear. I actually tried to reach out to Les Stroud to see if he would do a video or do any like written statement about anything creepy or weird that he's seen while filming Survivorman. But sadly, I was hit with a very nice rejection letter from his assistant. So maybe when we get, to 1 million subscribers or TikTok followers, maybe they'll reconsider. We'll get there. Anyways, like the good investigator I am, I went down a Les Stroud rabbit hole, as well as a Bigfoot rabbit hole, and went through all of his videos and put together what I thought was the most compelling evidence. And actually, there was quite a few things that made me really question my own stance and put up the question, is Bigfoot real? Now, I want to start off first with Les Stroud's encounter, and this was like the main thing too that made me think, is Bigfoot real? It was during a Discovery Channel interview. Les was answering the question, what was the strangest thing that has happened while filming Survivorman? And Les tells a horrifying story about when he was filming Survivorman in Alaska. Now, to set the scene a little bit, picture dense foliage, very green, very beautiful. Les was on his 4th or 5th day of surviving, and he was filming himself build a shelter. Now, Les explains when he's building a shelter, he will film himself for a bit, and then at some point he's just like, I gotta get this thing done. I can't just be filming myself. So he'll stop the cameras and just finish whatever he's doing. And it was while he stopped the camera that he heard something up in a tree. So he heard something and he just froze. And he heard this sound.
I'll just do it. It goes like this.
Now, in the Bigfoot world, this is actually called whooping. Nothing in the woods should actually make this sound. I mean, bears, elks, really nothing but a primate would make this weird whipping sound. And it was after it happened like 5 times that he eventually ran to his camera and tried to get whatever it was on camera. But sadly, whatever it was started booking it through the woods and he never heard the sound again. So it was actually this moment where Les was like, is Bigfoot real? And this is actually what started his whole Bigfoot Survivorman series. So while on the show, he actually captured some evidence. So here's a list of the most compelling evidence that I found on the Survivorman Bigfoot show. The first actually isn't from himself, but it's from his local guide, which is Todd Standing. Todd is a very well-known Bigfoot researcher and has even claimed to capture Bigfoot on camera. And for those of you just listening, I'll have the video up on YouTube. Anyways, Todd was filming a video of himself walking through the woods when all of a sudden he was surrounded by something.
Get
just hear how terrified he is. He yells at whatever is out there. He lights up his flare, and you could even hear something growl at him. Todd was so horrified that he never returned to that same spot until the day when he went with Les Stroud. Now, after analyzing this footage, I find it hard to say what's going on. I know there are bears in the area because they actually capture one on a trap camera later on in the episode. But I'll be honest, I'm no bear growl specialist, but that didn't really sound like a bear. Whatever Todd claims, that was a horrifying situation to be in, and he's lucky to be out of there alive. So my next piece of evidence actually does come from Les Stroud while he was camping in the Radium Mountains. Les was camping out under the stars when he experienced something strange.
Okay, so I just heard the strangest sound. It was like someone taking a couple of rocks and just banging them together really fast. And then just like a sound of something substantial just in the bush. And we're talking about maybe 20 feet away from me.
The interesting thing is, I feel like to make this sound, you have to have hands, like to bang rocks together. So I can't really imagine what was making that sound. It was either Todd messing with him, even though he wasn't at that campsite, or maybe a rock tumbling. I don't know, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Okay, in order to catch Bigfoot DNA, they were gluing spiky seeds to trees, and this is a super smart idea. And it's clever because whatever passes by them will capture some fur. And strangely enough, they did capture some fur 7 feet up in a tree. The hair was actually tested and came back as 95% human and 5% unknown. Either a strange tall man brushed up against this barb up in a tree, or it was Bigfoot. But I kind of wanted to dive into DNA testing because it seems like the testing is sort of unreliable. Even at crime scenes, hair is usually collected but considered unreliable and rarely used in forensic evidence. There are mountain lions up here, so I'm like super like, am I gonna get attacked? Anyways, for reliable DNA testing of hair, you actually need a skin cell. And to get a skin cell, you need a follicle. Without a follicle, you could actually test just the hair fibers themselves because they're made up of a bunch of proteins. When you break those proteins apart, it could actually tell you what type of animal it came from. So it's possible that the 5% unknown was just a contamination, or maybe it really was an unknown protein from a strange primate. But I think what we all really want is some good footage. And to get that during Les Stroud's search for Bigfoot, he puts an energy bar and an apple up in a tree, like high up, like 15 feet. And he sets up some trap cameras around it to capture whatever takes the food off these trees. And surprisingly, Les actually captured something. First we see the tree kind of jiggle and the apple disappears. But what's interesting is the trap camera didn't capture anything. In the left portion of the camera, you could see a couple of frames where there's something moving. It's in there for a frame and then disappears. But what's truly interesting is this is 7 feet up. So whatever it was big. And, well, I guess it could have been a bear, but to me, at least, this is a little bit too convenient because, I mean, it really could have been anything. So saying it's Bigfoot, really, I can't say for certain. But what do you guys think? All right, so one thing that I wanted to touch on before we continue is this Todd Standing guy, which was, Les's guide during this whole excursion. And Todd has actually been a Bigfoot researcher for a while. Todd is thoroughly convinced that Bigfoot is out there. And he's dedicated to finding evidence of Bigfoot. And he's so convinced that he's actually suing the government because they don't recognize Bigfoot as a species. So you could really see the dedication with this guy. So I did find some sources in the Bigfoot community that call Todd Standing actually fraud standing. They say that the picture or video of Bigfoot is fake and it's actually just him. They did a morphological comparison between him and Bigfoot, and it kind of does look like him. Another picture from Todd Standing is this face of Bigfoot, but some people are saying that it just looks like a mask. Some of the posters even said you could see the glue work on its face. So is Todd a hoaxer? I can't say for certain, but it's definitely a possibility. And if it is proven that he is a hoaxer, then it really nullifies all of the evidence that Les Stroud captures in his Bigfoot series. One thing that Les Stroud brings up multiple times is what evidence do we need that will make us believe? As far as digital captures, I mean, photos have been taken, videos have been taken, there's been audio recordings. The thing about digital stuff is it could all be faked, right? All right, well, what about DNA evidence? And according to Melba Ketchum, DNA evidence has been taken. And this is a person who works at the DNA Diagnostics. Some tested DNA samples turned out to be human with primate features. But, I mean, all in all, what is that really saying? I'm not really sure. It could just be a human hair follicle that has new proteins in it. Who knows? I think the evidence that I would really need is like bones. Like if there's a lot of Bigfoot out there, there's got to be bones, right? Either that or you capture one, which I feel like is the most like that's the most unethical thing is to capture Bigfoot, I feel like, but it would be, for certain that is a Bigfoot, right? And since we don't have Bigfoot in a zoo or Bigfoot bones, it's all up to speculation. But there's a slew of other evidence that Les Stroud brings up in a couple of episodes that I kind of wanted to research further. Now, Les brings up briefly in one episode, and this account is kind of strange, but it actually comes from the Bible, and specifically Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Now it says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown." Now, were these giants that they were referring to actually Bigfoots? Or were they actual just giants? What's actually interesting is the Bible doesn't actually just mention it just once, but a couple times. So in Numbers 13:32 to 33, it says, "And there we saw giants, the sons of Anak, who came from the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." So to me, these giants that they're referring to are ginormous. I mean, they felt like grasshoppers. So either they were exaggerating or these things were huge. All right, so I'm kind of jumping around a bit. Les Stroud brings up the story of Albert Ostman, and to me, this is probably the craziest Bigfoot story out there. Albert Ostman was a Canadian prospector who claims he was abducted by a family of Bigfoots. The year was 1924, and Albert Ostman was on vacation, enjoying the beautiful trees and crystal clear waters of the Toba Inlet in British Columbia. Albert was enjoying his time. He spent 3 nights out there and would occasionally find something strange. His campsite had been disturbed. It seemed to only be at night when the nocturnal visitor would rummage through his campsite. And on the 4th night, while Albert was sleeping, he was randomly picked up in his sleeping bag and carried for 3 hours. Now, Albert immediately noticed that he wasn't on a horse. He was on some upright creature being carried. Now, after this 3-hour trek, the beast finally dropped them off, and he realized that it was a Bigfoot. And actually, at the time, they didn't call them Bigfoots. They called them Beastmen. And it wasn't just one Bigfoot. It was a family of Bigfoots. There was 2 adults, a man and a woman looking Bigfoot, and then 2 baby Bigfoot, which I think he described as a son and daughter. The biggest Bigfoot was actually 8 feet tall, and apparently the family of Sasquatch was really friendly and treated him as a guest. Albert actually had a gun on him, but he decided not to use it because the Bigfoots never harmed him. They fed Albert grass and treated him quite well, and it seemed that they were just keeping him around really as a source of entertainment. But after 6 days, Albert was kind of sick of it and wanted to leave. Now, I'm not sure if he tried to leave before and was stopped, but apparently Albert felt like he had to make an escape. And to do so, he drugged the large male Sasquatch with snuff. And snuff is basically just like tobacco that you snort. So that made the Bigfoot all groggy, and he made his escape. Albert finally made it out of the woods, and in fear of everybody thinking he was crazy, he kind of just kept the encounter to himself. And it wasn't until 33 years later that he would tell a story. And it was only because in 1957 there were similar sightings to what he had seen, a large ape-like creature which had been reported in the Pacific Northwest. And so Albert kind of began to loosen up, and he told his story to friends and family. Eventually, the story made its way to the press, but with no evidence, it became just another anecdotal story. In 1969, Verlin Harrington, who was at the time a deputy sheriff for the Grays Harbor County in Washington, he claimed that he was in his police car and he was coming around a curve one night, and he, quote, saw a large, hairy creature in the middle of the road 90 feet away from him. He blinded the creature with his headlights, and after further investigation, he kind of thought it was a bear just standing upright, but then he turned a spotlight on to get a better look, and it had the butt of a human and breast of a woman, which bears don't usually have. Verlin is just, one of many anecdotal stories, but it doesn't leave us with much evidence other than another anecdotal sighting. Now, circling back to Les Stroud, although he had many unexplainable events that happened to him, to me, it was just that, unexplainable events. And though we can't say for certain that any of these events were actually Bigfoot related, we can say for certain that many people, like Todd Standing, Verlin Harrington, and Albert Ostman, have seen things that they can't explain. So there's loads of more evidence supporting the theory that Bigfoot is out there, and I probably only scratched the surface. So is Bigfoot out there? Possibly. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting over the past week of my last episode. Again, if you guys are coming from TikTok, I'm so glad you guys came and checked this out. I've really been wanting to start a long form podcast like this for a while. But if you want more from me, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see me again. If not, it's okay. It's okay, man. And if you want to see shorter forms of me, you can find me on The Happy Dad on TikTok. See you guys next week with another episode. Peace.